mean, we had thick files, but he said...
You know, I never knew that Baptists could be so mean.
I went down to Atlanta to the Georgia Baptist Convention. And when I got there, they introduced the president of Shorter College, a tip college, a Brew Park. And when they introduced Dr. Harris, they booed him. Now think about that. All the preachers, 400 or 500, when they introduced the greatest man, they booed him. But you know what? He acted like he didn't hear the boos.
Mitchell, I didn't hear any boos. Did you hear any boos?
Oh, yes, I did. And I'm not going to that convention. I'm not going anymore. Because of those, the ones who are leading us, they're the Christians. I must be in the wrong group.
Just days before the trustees were to vote on whether to admit Sam Oney, Harris Mobley came to his alma mater to give a talk before chapel.
The law school students had a protest as we were walking up to that chapel. They were all out there with ugly signs, nigger lovers, we don't want no niggers.
We have forced chapel, so it's kind of a ritualistic thing. Most of the time people are just milling around or reading papers. But that day, it was electric. From the 1963 speech.
Where do you find a missionary? Perched pretentiously on some imposing hilltop, isolated from the African community in colonial fashion, high above the tin roofs of the villages below, or out in the exclusive suburb for Europeans.
We, the white citizens of Middle Georgia, are bitterly opposed to admission of Negroes to Mercer University, whether he or she be from Ghana or the United States.
Let the missionary mimic the colonial past, but let him also know he is thereby distorting the Christian gospel.
I feel the good Lord made us different, and religion doesn't have a thing to do enforcing us and our associates.
Christian compassion and racism will not mix. They are like oil and water.
A Negro dancing with a white girl in a mixed school or a mixed marriage is the world's most horrible crime against the laws of God. And anyone who teaches or preaches that this thing is right is your mortal enemy and is bound for hell.
I would not ask any of you to go to the African or Asian mission field. You're in one here.
Integration is of the devil.
You don't need to go to Africa. You need to go to your homes. You need to go to your homes and communities dedicated to demonstrate Christian brotherhood for God's sake.
I will never contribute again to a Baptist school that is communized by mixing the races. Never!
On April 18, 1963, the trustees admitted Sam Oney to Mercer University.
From the New York Times, April 19th.
Trustees of Mercer University today voted to admit students without regard to race. Mercer is the first Georgia institution to drop the traditional ban against the admission of Negroes as students.
Now keep this in mind. A great number of trustees walked out. A great number of trustees resigned. But they voted to take it.
From the New York Herald Tribune editorial, April 25th.
Georgia's Mercer University, a Baptist institution, seems to have been the beneficiary of a little missionary work in reverse. Mr. Mobley went to Africa and converted Mr. Oney to Christianity. And now, Mr. Oney has brought the university face to face with the Christian ethic of equality and has converted the university.
Finally, I felt like I was fulfilling a promise.
And so, after waiting for an entire year, I finally arrived at Mercer in September 1963 with my heart in my throat as Lemuel Pitt, a black American GI, driving through Georgia, was shot to death.
I went to Mercer to be a minister. When I was a junior at Mercer, I was just playing basketball. My whole life was tied up with studying, becoming a good student, making friends, and being successful at basketball. And then Harris Mobley came along and gave that address. And after hearing Harris Mobley's speech, it dawned on me that I didn't have to spend my life getting ready to be a missionary to Africa. All I had to do was room with Sam Oney. And that changed my life. I was influenced by Harris Mobley just like he was by this Mac Bryan guy.
See, so it works. Mac, me, and me to Dawn.
It was either the first day Sam arrived or the next day. I took him downtown. We had to get him some clothes, a shirt or a tie to go to a church, you see, because that was going to be our next big deal. So I took him downtown to this men's store, and I had this old car at the time, and we went downtown and parked. And I have never been any more scared than I was, because I thought something might happen at that point. I felt the fear. I was with a black person walking down the street in Macon, Georgia in 1963, going into a store that was totally segregated. And I didn't know if we'd be thrown out of the store or what, so I'm kind of, well, my pulse is racing. So we walked down, and I look through the window of this men's store, and I see this guy, Ted Musial, who's in my English class with Mary Wilder, and I'm relieved somewhat, but I don't know what his stance will be regarding serving someone black, which is sort of against the mores, if not the law, you know. So we walked in. We looked at Ted Musial. He looked up, and I'll never forget what he said. He looked at me, and he looked at Sam, and he said, "Can I help you?" 38 years later, and I can put myself in that place and hear him say, "Can I help you?" So we had a shirt and a tie for him to wear to church.
We used to tell a joke when I was a kid about the church over there, Vineville Baptist Church. Okay. So one day, this guy, John, goes to Vineville Baptist Church. Sitting there, a person said,
Hey, boy, what you want?
I had a dream last night. The Almighty came to me in a dream and told me to attend this church.
No, boy, you picked the wrong dream. You go back and dream again.
So about 2 or 3 Sundays passed, and they came and told him the same thing.
The Almighty came to me in a dream and told me to attend this church.
No, boy, I told you already, you picked the wrong dream. You go back and dream again.
So all of a sudden, John, he didn't show up, right? And people started wondering, hey, what happened to John? What happened to John, you know? So about 4 or 5 Sundays go outside, and they see him.
Hey, boy, come here. Did you have that dream again?
Yeah, all right. I had a dream again. And the Almighty told me he's been trying to get in this church for 40 years. And he hasn't made it, so I know I don't stand a chance.
So I'm in my dormitory in the fall. This is the first week that Sam Oney comes to the school. I'm with him, Sunday's coming up, and someone knocks on my door.
Reverend Forrester, the minister of Chapel Square Baptist Church. My very first Sunday, my very first weekend in Georgia, Reverend Forrester comes marching into our room in Sherwood Hall. Now Baxter and I roommates.
Hello, boys. How are you? I'm Reverend Forrester from Tattle Square Baptist Church.
Well, nice to meet you. What's your name?
Dawn, can I speak to you outside?
I remember I walked out of the dormitory out there. There was a little bank of grass. I stood on that bank. And I remember the sun was starting to go down. It was sunset. And he came up very formally. He had on a full suit and a tie, and he said,
I want to tell you that you are more than welcome to attend our church. But I must tell you, Sam Oney is not welcome at our church. And if he comes, he will be arrested.
I just quietly sat there, looking at a person that I just couldn't quite comprehend. I looked at him a minute, I remember, and I said, okay, I'm glad to know. Thanks for giving me that information. And after this episode with the church at Tattle Square, I didn't want to be a minister. And that's when organized religion kind of lost me. That was the most powerful sermon I ever got in a negative way.
John had made up in his mind that the place to worship was not going to be Tapman Square Baptist Church, but rather Vineville Baptist Church.
It was either that day or the next day that I got a call from the Vineville Church, and it was a Dr. Moore. He called me. He said,
Don, why don't you bring Sam on into our church? I think he'll be allowed to worship with us.
I think, is what he said. So I said, thank you very much, I'll do that. I took Sam. We're going up the street in my car.
Headed towards sanctuary for worship.
It's tense. We're both tense.
I probably shouldn't have gone.
We walk into the church.
The church was packed and nobody moved.
You can feel the heaviness in the whole place. Walter Moore was preaching.
And at the end of the sermon, Reverend Moore, as is a tradition in Southern Baptist churches,
He asked for people to come forward,
so everybody gets up
and the two of us came down.
with about a dozen other students. And we lined up to face the congregation. And it usually is a formality. They usually greet you and welcome you, and then you go back to your seats.
Well, because this is a little different, why don't we vote on this group first?
So they took all us whites, pulled us over, and of course everybody voted yes. And then,
Reverend Moore says for everybody to go back and sit down except for me.
Well, we are very privileged. We are very honored to have in our midst this morning Sam Oney, a young man who came to know the Lord through our missionary efforts in Africa.
And before he gets finished that sentence, one man was up on his feet.
Reverend Moore, I'm not going to sit here and watch you destroy this church by bringing a nigger into the congregation.
All red-faced. And he went on and on and on. Before he was done, another woman was up.
My grandfather helped found this church, and I'm not going to lie to bring niggas into the congregation.
well, I'm just standing there and I can't believe this is taking place.
Another man was up on his feet. At which point, after he finished his ranting and raving, Reverend Moore says, let's put the matter to a vote.
Those in favor of Sam Oney's membership, please raise your hands.
The hands went up.
Those opposed, please raise your hands.
There was a sizable vote against Sam being admitted.
But I could tell, the minister could tell there was a slim majority favoring my membership. But the diehards won't give up. So they took the vote the second time. They still won't give up. So Reverend Moore then says,
Let's do a standing vote.
The vote was not overwhelmingly for him, but it was enough. He was voted in.
and so that was how I was so warmly welcomed my very first Sunday to worship in the house of God in America, the home base of the missionaries, having come into my part of the world for 113 years. My first Sunday.
From the Associated Press.
A 2,000-member Baptist church accepted a ministerial student from Takoradi, Ghana on Sunday and became the first Baptist church in Georgia to desegregate its membership.
From the Atlanta Constitution, the light that shines from this story dispels some of the darkness of a troubled world. The congregation voted unanimously to accept Mr. Oney.
What?
The action of the Bible Church, we believe, represents the kind of vitality that has kept the Christian church alive for nearly 2,000 years.
I was just so amazed that Sam Oney was voted into a white Baptist church, that I got him in without getting arrested. So it was a victory. That church did something that gives them a star to this day. And yeah, it was another nail in my coffin about becoming a part of organized religion. Because I somehow thought that when people went to church, they were Christian and they did the Christian thing. I just lost some of the idealism and some of the desire to dedicate my life to something where I was going to have 50% of the people voting against what was right.
That day was the beginning of a 4-year faith-shattering experience. My coming should have been a non-event. God says in this woman here, this woman is a part of me and I am a part of her. So I have no choice whether to accept or not to accept her. It was so simple The faith is a leavening influence that helps me to recognize that this man, my brother,